Imagine a crisp autumn evening in Chicago, the city lights twinkling like stars against the darkening sky. Inside a grand hotel ballroom, Abigail Sullivan stands in a flowing white gown, her auburn hair catching the soft glow of chandeliers. She's 27, with eyes that hold a quiet strength, though tonight they shimmer with unshed tears. Everyone calls her Abby, a name that feels warm and familiar, yet tonight it carries a weight she can't shake. She's marrying Julian Pierce, the handsome heir to the Pierce family, a name synonymous with wealth and power in the Midwest. Their real estate empire stretches across the country, and this wedding should be a fairy tale. But, as Abby clutches her bouquet, her heart sinks. Julian's gaze never meets hers. His smile is polite, rehearsed, a mask for the guests filling the room with chatter and champagne flutes. The reception fades into a blur of congratulations and clinking glasses. Abby feels like a stranger in her own story, her chest tight with a longing she can't name. Hours later, they arrive at a sleek penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. The view is breathtaking, the water stretching endlessly into the night, but the air inside feels cold, heavy. Julian stands by the window, his dark hair tousled, his suit jacket discarded. He doesn't turn to her. Instead, he speaks, his voice low and sharp, cutting through the silence. He tells her he doesn't love her. His heart belongs to Evelyn Ward, a woman he believes saved his life 8 years ago when their boat capsized near Lake Michigan. Abby freezes, her breath catching as he pulls out a divorce agreement, already signed. It's a dagger to her soul, yet he's not done. He says she has 3 months to get pregnant, to give the Pierce family an heir, or he'll find someone to make it happen for her. It's all about keeping up appearances for his grandfather Henry Pierce, the stern patriarch who holds the family's legacy in an iron grip. Abby's world tilts. She remembers the day her parents lost everything, their small construction company crumbling under a $10 million debt. It was Henry who stepped in, offering to erase that burden if she married Julian. She had said yes, not for love, but for them, for the hope of lifting the shame that shadowed her family. Now, standing in this sterile penthouse, she feels the cost of that choice. Julian's words echo in her mind, each one a bruise on her spirit. She wants to scream, to run, but instead she nods, her voice lost. He leaves the room, the door clicking shut behind him, and she's alone with the lake's vast silence pressing against the glass. Her hands tremble as she sinks onto the plush sofa, the fabric cold against her skin. She thinks of her mother's gentle smile, her father's proud laugh, both faded now under years of struggle. This marriage was supposed to save them, to mend what was broken. But Julian's indifference strips away that illusion. Abby's fingers trace the edge of the divorce papers, her mind racing. She could walk away, let the debt swallow what's left of her family's name, or she could fight, not for Julian, but for herself. A spark flickers in her chest, small but stubborn. She won't let him control her, not like this. If he wants an heir, she'll give him one, but on her terms. Her eyes drift to the lake, its surface calm yet hiding depths she can't fathom. Somewhere out there, she thinks, there's a way to reclaim her heart, to find a love that doesn't feel like chains. Tears slip down her cheeks, warm against the chill of the room. She wipes them away, resolve hardening in her veins. She doesn't know how she'll do it, how she'll face the next 3 months with a man who sees her as nothing more than a means to an end. But she knows one thing. She's tired of being invisible. Abby stands, her reflection faint in the window, a woman caught between duty and desire. She whispers to herself, a promise carried on the night breeze. She'll find a way to break free, to feel alive again, even if it means stepping into the unknown. The city hums below, unaware of the quiet storm brewing in her soul, a storm that will change everything she thought she knew about love. Rain falls gently over Chicago, a soft patter against the cobblestone streets of Wicker Park. Abigail Sullivan pulls her coat tighter, her auburn hair damp beneath the hood as she steps into a small bar tucked between art galleries and vintage shops. The air inside is warm, scented with cedar and whiskey, a stark contrast to the cold emptiness she left behind in Julian's penthouse. She's here tonight not for escape, but for a purpose, a quiet rebellion against the life that's suffocating her. Her heart beats unevenly, a mix of fear and determination as she scans the room. She needs someone, anyone, to help her break free from Julian's cruel demands. Then she sees him, a man sitting alone at the bar, his presence like a flame in the dim light. His name is Ryan Caldwell, though she doesn't know it yet. He's tall, with broad shoulders and dark hair that falls just over his brow, a quiet strength in the way he holds his glass. His eyes, a deep hazel, catch hers across the room, and for a moment, Abby forgets why she's here. There's something in his gaze, a warmth that feels like coming home, though she's never met him before. She takes a breath, steadies herself, and walks over. Her voice trembles as she makes her offer, blunt and raw. She needs him to help her get pregnant, to give her the child Julian demands, so she can claim her freedom. It's a transaction, she says, nothing more. She'll pay him whatever it takes. Ryan tilts his head, studying her, and then he smiles, soft and unexpected. He agrees, but not for the money. He tells her he sees something in her eyes, something worth more than any price she could name. They leave the bar together, the rain a gentle curtain around them as they walk to a nearby hotel. In the quiet of the room, Abby feels the weight of her choice, her hands shaking as she sits on the edge of the bed. Ryan doesn't push her. Instead, he pours her a glass of water, his movements slow and careful, as if he knows how fragile she feels. They talk, first about nothing, the weather, the city, then about everything. She tells him about Julian, the penthouse, the divorce papers, her voice breaking as the words spill out. Ryan listens, his silence a comfort she didn't expect. Then he speaks, his voice low and steady, about a memory from his childhood. He was 10, lost on a tiny island near Lake Michigan after a storm wrecked his family's boat. A girl found him, shared her last piece of bread, and stayed until the rain stopped. She ran off before he could thank her, and he never saw her again. He looks at Abby, his eyes searching, and asks if she believes in fate. Abby laughs, a small, shaky sound, and shakes her head. She doesn't remember that day, doesn't think it could be her, but something stirs in her chest, a flicker of warmth she can't explain. They spend the night together, not just in body but in spirit, their laughter mingling with the rain outside. In the morning, she leaves with his number scribbled on a napkin, her heart lighter than it's been in months. Days turn into weeks, and they meet again, this time at a cozy wooden cabin Ryan owns just outside Chicago. It's a hidden place, surrounded by trees and the distant shimmer of the lake, a sanctuary from her crumbling world. They sit by the fireplace, the crackling logs painting shadows on the walls, and Abby feels something shift. Ryan's touch is gentle, his words a balm to her wounds. He tells her she's more than a means to an end, more than what Julian sees. She wants to believe him, but fear holds her back. This was supposed to be a deal, not a lifeline. One evening, as rain taps the cabin's windows, Ryan takes her hand and leads her outside. They stand under the awning, the air cool and damp, and he pulls her close. He whispers that he doesn't care about the money, that he'd stay even if she walked away right now. Abby's breath catches, her walls crumbling as she looks into his eyes. She feels seen, truly seen, for the first time since she said yes to Julian. Her fingers brush his cheek, and she leans in, their lips meeting in a kiss that tastes of rain and promise. It's not just desire, it's a quiet ache, a longing she's buried too long. She pulls back, her voice barely a whisper, telling him this can't be real, that she's too broken for this. Ryan smiles, soft and sure, and says he'll wait until she believes she's enough. Abby's heart twists, torn between the safety of her plan and the pull of something deeper, something she never dared hope for. The wooden cabin outside Chicago becomes Abigail Sullivan's refuge, a place where the world feels softer, kinder. Each time she steps through its door, Ryan Caldwell is there, his presence a steady anchor in the storm of her life. The weeks slip by, and their meetings grow into something she can't name. They sit by the fireplace, the glow dancing across Ryan's face as he tells her stories of his childhood, his dreams, the way he sees the world. Abby listens, her heart swelling with every word, though she fights to keep it caged. She traces the lines of his hand one night, the warmth of his skin seeping into hers, and wonders how something so simple can feel so vast. He looks at her, his hazel eyes gentle, and says she doesn't have to hide from him. She wants to believe it, to let herself fall, but the weight of Julian's demands pulls her back. Back in the city, the Pierce family's sprawling estate in Lake Forest looms over her like a shadow. Julian notices the change in her, the way her eyes don't dim as quickly, the quiet strength in her step. He corners her one evening in the marble-floored hallway, his voice sharp with something new, something possessive. He asks where she's been, who she's been with, his hands gripping her arms too tight. Abby pulls away, her pulse racing, and tells him it's none of his business. He doesn't love her, never has, so why does he care now? Julian's jaw tightens, his dark eyes flickering with a jealousy he won't admit. He mutters about Evelyn, how she's the only one who matters, but his gaze lingers on Abby, unsettled, searching. She walks away, her chest tight, knowing he's starting to see her as more than a pawn, and it terrifies her. Evelyn Ward feels it too, the shift in the air. She's been Julian's anchor, his muse, the woman he's built his heart around since that stormy night on Lake Michigan. But Abby's presence gnaws at her, a threat she can't ignore. One afternoon, she waits in the estate's grand foyer, her blonde hair catching the sunlight as Abby descends the stairs. Evelyn's smile is cold, her words laced with venom. She warns Abby to stay in her place, to stop playing games with Julian's heart. Abby's hands tremble, but she holds her ground, her voice steady as she says she wants nothing from him. Evelyn's eyes narrow, and later that night, Abby nearly slips on the staircase, a slick patch of oil glistening under the chandelier's light. She catches the railing, her breath hitching, and knows it wasn't an accident. Evelyn's shadow lingers in her mind, a whisper of danger she can't shake. Ryan becomes her shield, her solace. They meet again at the cabin, the autumn leaves falling like embers outside. He pulls her into his arms, his embrace a promise against the chaos closing in. She confesses the incident, her voice breaking as she admits how scared she felt. Ryan's hands cup her face, his thumbs brushing away tears she didn't know had fallen. He tells her she's not alone, that he'll protect her, no matter what it takes. They sit on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, the lake's distant murmur blending with their quiet breaths. Abby rests her head on his shoulder, her heart aching with a love she's afraid to claim. She tells him about the debt, the $10 million that chained her to Julian, the promise Henry made to erase it if she gives him a great-grandchild. Ryan listens, his silence a steady pulse, and then he kisses her forehead, soft and sure, saying, "She's worth more than any deal." Days later, Abby feels a change, a flutter deep within her. She buys a test, her hands shaking as she waits in the cabin's small bathroom. 2 lines appear, faint but real, and her breath catches. She's pregnant, carrying Ryan's child, a secret that could unravel everything. She doesn't tell Julian, doesn't dare breathe it aloud in the Pierce estate. Instead, she drives to the cabin, the city fading behind her. Ryan opens the door, his smile fading as he sees her face. She steps inside, her voice trembling as she tells him the truth. His eyes widen, then soften, and he pulls her close, his arms a fortress around her. He whispers that he's happy, that this child is a gift, not a burden. Abby clings to him, tears soaking his shirt, her heart torn between joy and fear. She loves him, she knows it now, but the lie she's living feels heavier with every beat. Henry Pierce summons her the next day, his voice gruff over the phone. She stands in his study, the walls lined with books and old photographs, his presence filling the room like a storm. He repeats his promise, $10 million wiped clean if she gives Julian a child. His eyes bore into her, sharp and unyielding, and Abby nods, her throat tight. She doesn't tell him the baby isn't Julian's, doesn't let her hands drift to her stomach. She thinks of Ryan, of the life growing inside her, and feels a pang of guilt for the deception. But this is her chance, her way out, a path to save her family and hold on to the love she's found. She leaves the study, the weight of her secret pressing down, and wonders how long she can keep it hidden. Outside, the wind carries the scent of the lake, a reminder of the night she met Ryan, the night her heart began to heal. Autumn deepens around Chicago, the leaves turning gold and crimson along the shores of Lake Michigan. Abigail Sullivan carries a secret that grows heavier each day, a secret nestled deep within her, a life tied to Ryan Caldwell. She meets him at the cabin whenever she can, stealing moments of peace amid the chaos of her life with Julian. One crisp afternoon, they walk hand in hand through a quiet park near the lake, the water glinting under a pale sun. Ryan stops, pulling her close, his breath warm against her cheek as he whispers that he loves her, that he'd give anything to build a future with her and their child. Abby's heart swells, her fingers tightening around his, and for the first time she lets herself imagine it. A life free from Julian, a home filled with laughter instead of lies. She kisses him, soft and desperate, pouring all her unspoken hopes into that moment, and he holds her like she's the only thing that matters. But shadows creep closer. Evelyn Ward watches from afar, her jealousy a fire that burns hotter with every glance Julian spares for Abby. She's seen the way he lingers now, the way his eyes follow Abby through the pierced estate, a flicker of doubt in his devotion to her. Evelyn can't lose him, not to the woman she's dismissed as weak. She hires 2 men, rough voices promising discretion, and sets a plan in motion. It happens on a foggy evening as Abby walks through the park alone, her thoughts drifting to Ryan. A van screeches to a halt, and before she can scream, hands grab her, pulling her into the dark. Her heart pounds, her hands shielding her stomach as they bind her wrists, the cold metal biting into her skin. She hears Evelyn's name, a hissed instruction to make it look like an accident, and terror grips her, not just for herself, but for the life she carries. Ryan feels it, a gnawing unease he can't explain. He's at the cabin, waiting for Abby, when his phone stays silent too long. He drives into the city, his hands tight on the wheel, instinct guiding him back to the park. He spots the van near the lake's edge, its doors ajar, and his blood runs cold. He runs, calling her name, and finds her tied to a tree, gasoline splashed around her feet. One of the men fumbling with a lighter. Ryan lunges, tackling him to the ground, his fists flying as Abby's voice breaks through the fog, pleading for him to stop. The second man swings a knife, and Ryan twists, taking the blade in his shoulder. He grunts, blood soaking his jacket, but he doesn't falter. He knocks the man out, his strength fueled by a love he can't lose. He stumbles to Abby, cutting her free, and pulls her into his arms, his voice raw as he says he can't let her go, not again. Julian arrives moments later, drawn by a frantic call from a bystander. He sees the scene, Abby trembling in Ryan's embrace, the blood pooling beneath him, and Evelyn's hired men unconscious on the ground. His world fractures. He grabs one of the men, shaking him until the truth spills out. Evelyn planned it all, desperate to erase Abby. Julian staggers back, his mind reeling to that night 8 years ago, the boat sinking into Lake Michigan's icy depths. He remembers a girl's voice, steady and brave, pulling him to shore. It wasn't Evelyn's sharp tones, but Abby's soft cadence, a memory he'd buried under Evelyn's lies. He falls to his knees, reaching for Abby, his voice breaking as he begs her to forgive him, to come back. She pulls away, her eyes hard, and tells him it's too late. Her heart belongs to Ryan now, to the man who risked everything for her. They return to the Pierce estate, Ryan's wound bandaged but his grip firm on Abby's hand. Henry Pierce waits in his study, his face a mask of stone as Julian confesses everything, the kidnapping, Evelyn's betrayal, the truth about that night on the lake. Henry's gaze shifts to Abby, his voice cold as he asks about the child she carries. She stands tall, her hand resting on her stomach, and admits it's not Julian. Henry's eyes darken and he demands she end the pregnancy, offering to clear the Sullivan family's $10 million debt if she complies. He reveals a secret that cuts deeper than any knife. He orchestrated her family's ruin years ago, a petty revenge against her mother for rejecting him in their youth. Abby's breath catches, her love for Ryan the only thing keeping her steady. She refuses, her voice trembling but fierce, saying she'd rather lose everything than the life she's chosen. Henry orders Julian to take her away, to force her compliance, but Ryan steps forward, his presence a quiet storm. He reveals his identity as a Caldwell, his family's wealth dwarfing the Pierce empire, and warns Henry to let Abby go or face ruin. Julian hesitates, torn between his grandfather's will and the love he's lost, but he can't meet Abby's eyes. She turns to Ryan, her tears falling freely now, and whispers that she's sorry, that she never meant to drag him into this. He brushes her hair back, his touch tender despite the pain in his shoulder, and says he'd walk through fire for her, that she's his home. The room falls silent, Henry's rage simmering, but Abby feels a strength she's never known, rooted in the love that's carried her through the flames. The air in the Pierce estate hangs heavy after the storm of truths, a quiet that feels more like an ending than a pause. Abigail Sullivan stands in Henry's study, her hand still warm from Ryan Caldwell's grasp, her heart steady despite the chaos she's faced. Henry's face twists with fury, his voice a low growl as he threatens her one last time, promising to destroy what's left of her family if she defies him. But Abby's done bending. She looks at him, her eyes clear, and tells him she's keeping her child, that no amount of money or power can take away the love she's found. Ryan steps closer, his shoulder bandaged but his presence unshaken, and says the Pierce family will regret crossing him. His words carry the weight of the Caldwell name, a promise of protection Abby never dreamed she'd need. Julian watches from the corner, his dark eyes hollow, his hands clenched at his sides. He steps forward, his voice soft and broken, asking her to stay, to give him a chance to make things right. He admits he was wrong, that he sees her now, the girl who saved him on Lake Michigan, the woman he should have loved. Abby's chest tightens, a flicker of pity stirring for the man she once hoped would care. But she shakes her head, her voice gentle yet firm, saying she's not his to hold anymore. She turns to Ryan, their fingers lacing together, and they walk out of the study, leaving Julian with his regrets and Henry with his fading empire. Hours later, news breaks. Henry collapses from a stroke, his body half paralyzed, a consequence of the secrets he couldn't bury. Evelyn's fate is sealed too, her arrest swift after the kidnapping, her lies crumbling in a jail cell far from Chicago. Abby and Ryan return to the wooden cabin, the place where their love took root. The lake shimmers beyond the trees, its surface calm under a late autumn sky. He leads her inside, the familiar scent of cedar wrapping around them, and they sit by the fireplace, its warmth chasing away the chill of the past days. Ryan kneels before her, his hands cradling hers, and asks her to let him stay, to build a life together with her and their children. Abby's breath catches, her eyes tracing his face, the man who saw her when she felt invisible, who fought for her when she couldn't fight alone. She nods, tears spilling over, and whispers that she loves him, that he's her safe harbor in a world that tried to break her. He pulls her close, his lips brushing hers, a kiss that feels like a vow, tender and unbreakable. Days later, Abby stands in a Chicago courtroom, her divorce from Julian finalized with a single signature. The weight of the Pierce name lifts from her shoulders, replaced by a freedom she can taste in the crisp air. She drives to the lake's edge, a letter from her mother clutched in her hand, the last words written before the debt tore her family apart. She reads it aloud, her voice trembling as she promises to live for herself now, to honor the love her parents gave her. Ryan joins her, his arm slipping around her waist, and she leans into him, feeling the gentle swell of her stomach where their twins grow. She's 4 months along, a quiet miracle that anchors her to this new beginning. They stand together, the water lapping at the shore, and she smiles, a real smile that lights her eyes for the first time in years. Julian fades into the background of her life, a shadow she no longer fears. He visits Henry in the hospital, his grandfather's frail form a stark reminder of the cost of their pride. He writes to Abby once, a letter she never opens, leaving it on the cabin's table as a relic of a past she's outgrown. She doesn't need his apologies, doesn't want his guilt. Her world is here, with Ryan, in the small moments that stitch their days together, his laughter as they paint a nursery, his hand on her belly feeling the first kicks, the way he hums softly when he thinks she's asleep. She knows the debt still lingers, $10 million her family can't repay, but Ryan offers to clear it, his voice steady with love. She refuses, not out of pride, but because she wants their life to be theirs, built on trust, not transactions. The sun dips low over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. Abby stands on the shore, Ryan beside her, his hand warm in hers. She thinks of the girl she was, lost in a marriage that dimmed her light, and the woman she's become, strong enough to choose love over fear. She turns to Ryan, her voice soft as she says, he's her everything, the one who pulled her from the ashes of her old life. He smiles, his eyes bright with a future they'll shape together, and promises to be there, always. Abby closes her eyes, the lake's breeze carrying away the last echoes of her pain, leaving only the quiet bloom of a love that's hers to keep.